All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. I'll be doing my preview and prediction for the New Mexico Bowl between BYU and SMU. 2-point line in favor of the Mustangs. Saturday, December 17th is the date of this one. 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. University Stadium in Albuquerque, New Mexico is the site of this contest. BYU leads the series 3-0 all time. Last meeting in 1997. Looking at the SMU Offense, 38 points per game, 480 yards per game. Sonny Dykes departs the TCU, but leaves behind Rhett Lashley and a great offense led by Tanner Mordecai, 3,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, 9 picks. You look at Rashee Rice, who's one of the nation's top receivers, 96 receptions, 1,355 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's just been such a phenomenal pass catcher here for SMU. Very deep. Thing about Rashee Rice is, 14 yards per reception. This guy, he does a lot of damage in a variety of different ways. Jordan Curley, 31 grabs, 538 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 17.38 yards per catch for him. Dylan Goffney, another 369. And then Moochie Dixon, 300-plus yards for him. So they're pretty versatile at pass catcher. And then the backfield, I think the run attack, has fell off a little bit this year under Lashley, but I think they've certainly been effective. 4.2 yards per attempt, 551 yards for Tyler Levine, 9 touchdowns. Velton Gardner, a transfer from Kansas, 368 on 70 touches. And then Kamar Wheaton, he's gotten involved a little bit as well. Former 5-star from Alabama, even though he has also been battling some injuries, pretty banged up. Just an offense that moves with a lot of tempo, a lot of big plays. Their pass protection this year I think has been very good. Marcus Bryant, Jalen Thomas, they've been phenomenal up front for them. Cameron Irvin, whenever he's played, he's been really good. Justin Osborne, this is a very good offensive line, I would say, for SMU. Not so much on the ground as they are through the air, but SMU top to bottom, very good offense. A veteran quarterback, great receiver in Rice, who, put up some of the best numbers in college football. This is a pretty good offense top to bottom. I certainly don't think they're as good as they were a season ago. Dykes leaving certainly, hurt a little bit. 38.4 points per game, though, in back-to-back seasons. It's pretty, crazy to be spot on with those numbers, but it definitely doesn't feel like this offense is as explosive as it is, even though the numbers are a little bit better. Just something seems to be missing from SMU. And it's probably the running game not being as efficient. Look at the BYU offense. They've been terrific in their own right. 32 points per game. Jaron Hall, 3,100 yards, 31 touchdowns, only 6 picks. He's really lifted his draft stock this season. Hall, this is a guy that performs very well downfield. 352 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. He's elusive. He's mobile. Obviously a lot of clean pockets. This offensive line, I think, is going to be a real difference maker. Blake Freeland, one of the nation's best tackles, far and away probably is the best. Connor Pay, he's been a phenomenal player for them this season, and last year as well. Clark Barrington, this is a phenomenal trio of linemen they have. Harris LaChance as well. This is just a very good offensive line, one of the nation's best and more underrated units, and that allows them to have, pretty sustainable balance. Christopher Brooks, he's had a pretty strong year coming over from Cal. I would say, rushing for 729 yards, 5 touchdowns, about 72 yards per game. 174 yards on the ground for this team. Keota, 332 yards rushing for him. They got some different guys like to get involved, especially in the receiving core. Cody Epps out for the year, of course, but Keanu Hill and Puka Nacua, 2 veterans, 36 grabs, 572 yards, and 7 scores for Hill and Nacua. 625 on 48 grabs with 5 trips to the end zone. Chase Roberts, he's really been good for them this year. And, at times when they've needed him to step up, Isaac Rex at tight end. Been around a long time. Another 6 touchdowns. Should have clipped the 300-yard mark in this one. BYU, this is an offense that certainly, I think, most would say have lived up to expectations. The defense, of course, we'll get to in a minute. Not so much. But I'd say they have pretty sustainable balance. Jaron Hall, a very good quarterback, a lot of clean pockets, and that's when he can do his most damage downfield. Very impressed by him. Of course, I, again, think he's lifted his draft stock tremendously this year. Again, top to bottom, 441 yards per game for BYU. This is a very fun offense to watch, especially when they like to air it out, because, Hall, he takes advantage of one-on-one coverage when he gets it, and he really gives his opportunities to these pass catchers. Looking at the SMU defense, this is a unit that's really just been poor. I thought it would be a lot better this year with some veterans coming back, about 35 points per game given up, 446 yards. They've just not been good at one particular thing. 243 passing yards, giving up 200-plus on the ground. Jimmy Phillips, 76 tackles, 7 tackles for loss. I think he's been a very good player for them. There's some guys on the pass rush I thought would be much better coming into the year, and they certainly haven't exactly lived up to expectations by any means. Nelson Paul stepped up when you didn't really expect it. He's got 9 tackle for loss. And he's also leading the team with 5 sacks. 26 is not the worst number, but this is not a team that has much of an edge presence. They have 2 guys, freshmen, Jalen Samuels, Isaiah Smith, who've had 3 sacks each, and Devondre Levelston, one of those guys I thought would be great this year on the interior, has just not been that good for SMU. Not a very highly regarded defense by any means. Again, Phillips, star in the middle for them. It's just a very interesting unit. I think Junior Acho coming off the edge, he's been a pretty good run defender and a pass rusher for them. They don't cover very well, of course. Just Brandon Crossley's probably their best cover guy. This is a team that just gives up yards in bunches, though, and they don't really, 56.8% opponent completion rating. I'd say that's pretty good. But at the same time, teams are throwing a lot against them because this is an offense you have to, get in a duel with usually for the most part. And, I think they put a little bit better down the stretch after that Houston game. They gave up 528 and 7 touchdowns. But that's not something I think is sustainable. They weren't exactly great against Memphis. This is a defense, though, that does have some strong individual players. Nick Roberts, 3 picks. Phillips, I keep talking about him. He's great. But for the most part, no, this is not an SMU defense that's really going to scare anybody, give up a lot of yards. That's certainly going to be a problem going into this game against the BYU offense that loves to, thrive with balance. Looking at the BYU defense, it's no better for the Cougars. They got all 11 starters back, had some great depth coming into the year on this defense. Just terrible coaching job. Kalani Sitake did not do a great job with this defense by any means. They do have some good players still, though. Max Tooley at linebacker is really good for them. Keenan Philly, Ben Bywater. I think this is a really deep football team. Max Tooley's not played in numerous weeks. Pretty sure he's out for the year. But, still, this is a very talented roster. Tyler Beatty on the defensive line. I'm not really sure what they do well. I do think that the rotation and the size they have, some of the toughness on the defensive line, certainly notable. Only 45 tackles for loss this year and 13 sacks. Those are 2 of the worst numbers in the nation. So, even though those affirmations may be true, they don't produce very well at all. Lorenzo Fatuia, he's really good, I'd say, at times. Johnny Nelson as well. This is just not a very good defense. They give up a lot of yards. They got absolutely hammered against Arkansas. They almost gave up, 700 yards in that game. Gave up a lot of points, 52 of them. It probably should have been more, honestly. And then the secondary is also drastically underperformed. Max Tooley, 3 picks in the 7 games he played, only 7 total for the team. The linebackers were probably the best playmakers with their, with their ball skills, that is. The secondary did not play good at all. Caleb Hayes, vastly underperformed, I would say. Malik Moore didn't really get involved much this year. Top to bottom, not a great defense for either of these teams. I do think that some of these linebackers, though, with their playmaking abilities, Peyton Willigar, of course, him being hurt, really didn't help things either. So they certainly had the injury bug, but things were going poor before that, so it's not really a great excuse, but it's allowed Philly and Bywater to step up and kind of take the reins of this defense. Gabe Judy Lally, though, I think he's had a pretty good year. He's probably their best corner guy, one of the bright spots on this football team, 43 tackles, 6 pass breakups, 119th in third down defense, and 123rd in takeaways. They don't get sacks. They don't get off the field. They don't force turnovers. This defense is just not good for BYU one bit. That leads to the final thoughts on the prediction. Keys to the game, pretty simple. Both teams find a defense. This is just flat out poor. And I think, BYU's going to win this one 45-38. I think their offensive line is going to allow them to have some pretty spectacular balance in this game. I think they're going to be able to run the ball quite well. I think they'll get off the field maybe just a time or 2, maybe 3 times, and that'll be the difference because I think they're going to be running the ball, and I think they're going to be doing it very sound in this offensive line. They're just dynamic. The SMU offensive line, they're not bad in their own right, but I don't think they've been as great on the ground, and they're not going to be able to exactly control the clock, and I think they'll have, more so than not limited possessions, especially maybe in the second half if they're getting grinded down on. So I'm going to take BYU in this game. Not much confidence on it because neither team has a defense at all. BYU's, I would say they're worse with their abilities not to get to the quarterback. They can't take the ball away or anything like that. But SMU, they give up 200-plus rushing per game. And, just complete disaster on both sides. So if you like offense, you should certainly watch this one. It's going to be a fun one. 121st in run defense for SMU. So this will be a good game, I think, in terms of an offensive showcase, but don't expect much defense. I'm going to take BYU to get the job done. That's it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.